Hello, and welcome to an optimal range Vorkath mechanics guide. Now that's a mouthful. Are you tired of waiting to do damage during the acid phase, wasting vital enchanted bolt specs after killing off the zombified spawn, or just want to learn the perfect mechanics and optimizations for killing Vorkath with a crossbow? This guide aims to fix all that while using one of the easiest and greatest solo money making bosses, Vorkath, as a vessel to teach fundamental yet essential game mechanics. After this guide, you'll learn you can sweat just a little bit at Vorkath while also preparing you and your account for the endgame Old School Runescape has to offer, with both funds and some PVM experience. To start off with, this guide will not be going over the basics of Vorkath, but will instead be focusing on the optimizations you are likely missing out on while killing Vorkath with a crossbow. If you're looking for a great all-purpose guide with setups and different combat styles, I'd recommend Chaos's Ultimate Vorkath Guide. It's in the description below. In this guide, I will be covering essential Runelite plugins for Vorkath and future PVM, fundamental game mechanics, and, finally, how to put it all together for Vorkath with optimal gameplay. These topics will be separated by YouTube chapters for your convenience. To start off with, the most essential Runelite plugin for Vorkath, and possibly all future PVM encounters you'll have, is going to be the Tile Indicators plugin. You can access it, of course, in the Runelite Plugins by clicking on the configuration button here. Once you have it open, you can just type in tile or tile indicators. You should see it pop up here. Make sure you turn it on, but also go ahead and check it out to configure it. And the most important part of this plugin is the highlight true tile. Make sure that's clicked on. And what that does is, for your character, while it is on, you will always see exactly where your character is, no matter what the graphics or where your character looks to be. It's great at actually giving you information of where you really are in relation to the environment, and also special attacks that require that you keep moving. It also greatly shows you how running works, that you skip a tile when you run. I also highly recommend the highlight destination tile. So when I click, I can see where I clicked and I know where I'm headed, and so I can make changes on the go as needed. So go ahead and add the zombified spawn into your NPC indicators plugin. So that way when it's highlighted, you can see where it is more easily and click on it easier as well. You can also use the ground markers plugin to highlight tiles where you'd like to stand and remember to go to, or even like I have here, highlight tiles and assign a label to them so you can remember to either turn off your run, your auto retaliate, make sure your quick prayers are all set, and just serve as great reminders of where to stand and what to do if you assign a label. Before we can get to applying advanced mechanics, it is important to know what a tick is and the basic mechanics of movement and eating in Old School Runescape. Skip ahead if you are familiar with these topics. From the wiki, the game runs on units of time of approximately 0.6 seconds called ticks. All actions are a multiple of this basic tick time. This includes any instance where a message appears in the chat interface, any instance that experience is gained, any instance that a monster spawns, and any other actions a player performs, including animations. Each action you register within one tick will start to take place by the beginning of the next tick. When you walk, you cover one tile per tick, but when you run, you cover 2 tiles per tick by skipping the middle tile. Your character will always prioritize paths that are straight lines in the cardinal directions, and then after that will then proceed with diagonal lines. This is useful for dodging acid tiles because if you have an acid tile in your straight path, you must steer your character to another tile in a different row column before you would have reached the acid. Otherwise, your character will just walk through it. Luckily for us, the back row is mostly empty of acid tiles, and this mechanic will be rarely used. I'm not going to cover all the intricacies of eating in Old School Runescape, but it is important to note that drinking a potion or brew will only delay your character's next eat action as opposed to normal food, which will also delay your character's attack by 4 ticks. This means you can safely use a potion or brew right after you attack to restore prayer, cure venom, or even heal if using a brew, without worrying about losing DPS or preventing you from killing the spawn in time. Just remember that doing so will still delay your next eat or sip and is called pot blocking. Another eating mechanic to take advantage of is combo eating. Normally, eating will delay your next eat by 4 ticks. However, if you eat, then immediately use a potion or Crossbow, you can consume both in the same tick. This is great for healing large amounts of health in a short span of time to keep your damage flowing. Karambwans are a special food that only incur a 3-tick delay, but will also ignore the delay of anything you ate prior, as long as it wasn't another Karambwan. A common triple eat is food, brew, Karambwan. Vorkath has 2 special attacks where we can begin to make optimizations. The first one I'm going to talk about is the zombified Ice Dragonfire attack. In future reference, I'm just going to call this the freeze attack. During this special attack, Vorkath will freeze the player in place and then throw out a zombified spawn that should be killed before it reaches the player, otherwise you'll take significant damage. Of course, the best way to do this is crumble undead, but something to note is that Vorkath is invincible during this phase. He will not take any damage, not from specs or any other attacks. So of course it is best to focus on the spawn. However, there are 2 spots where we can improve and optimize during Vorkath's freeze attack. The first spot is, if you notice, while Vorkath freezes you, he takes a split second to throw out his spawn. This gives us a window to eat without losing any DPS. You can use one action here, or 1 tick essentially, to either eat, so you can combo eat, or you can drink a pot. You will still be able to kill the spawn, plenty of time left. After the spawn is dead, you also get a split second where you can either eat a Karambwan or drink a pot, so that way your attack will go off as soon as Vorkath becomes damageable again. The second mechanic you can improve on during Vorkath's freeze attack is to always step back. While typically most players only ever step back during the acid phase, it also serves 2 great purposes to step back during the freeze attack as well. The first purpose is to pull your character out of the attack range of Vorkath. What this does is your character will be unable to attack Vorkath because they are frozen out of range. This prevents your character from attacking Vorkath and wasting ticks when it should be targeting the zombified spawn directly. This ensures that you will always have your ticks open and available to use to kill the spawn instead of being stuck in an animation of attacking. The second reason this is also a great mechanic to use during the freeze attack phase is because when your character is frozen outside of its attack range of Vorkath, not only will of course you not attack Vorkath directly, enabling you to hit the zombified spawn in a reasonable time, but also once the spawn is dead, your character will be unable to attack Vorkath until he is unfrozen. This prevents you from attacking Vorkath while he is still invincible. Instead, will force your character to walk up before he can attack, meaning you will always attack at the exact tick Vorkath becomes damageable again. Let's talk about the second special attack phase Vorkath has, the acid phase. The acid phase is pretty notorious for newer players or people first trying out Vorkath. Oftentimes you'll take damage, but no worries, there's a lot of tricks to use during the acid phase, not only just to dodge damage, but to also do damage during the acid phase. And for those who are waiting, yes, we will be doing the boot swap with a 5-tick weapon, the Crossbow. You may have noticed that I turn off my prayer during each special attack phase. The reason being is, for the freeze attack, you will not be doing damage, and so the prayers are needed, as well as you won't be taking any damage. For the acid phase, while you can do damage with the Woox Walk, because Vorkath takes less damage during the acid phase, your DPS increase with your prayer on is quite minimal, and often you'll find you'll get shorter trips at the cost of maybe a slight increase in DPS during the acid phase, which to me personally is not really worth it. The first step to optimizing the acid phase is of course to guarantee never take damage again. You'll notice that I've marked 3 tiles adjacent to the entry or exit green. These 3 tiles will be guaranteed to never receive any of the random acid Vorkath spits out. This means you can always safely step back when Vorkath starts his acid phase to one of these 3 tiles. I have a strong suspicion that these tiles as well may also be safe, but I have not confirmed it. Now that we are on the back row to avoid Vorkath's acid, we must begin moving to dodge fireballs. I prefer to move to one of the outer safe spots, like so, and to click the opposite one while waiting to see where all the other acid has landed. This will help us transition nicely into the Woox Walk. But before we begin the Woox Walk, it's important to scout for a minimum of 1 acid-free tile to attack from on the road directly in front of us. But I typically prefer 2 open tiles for my favorite or less click-intensive pattern. If this is your first time hearing about it, Woox Walking is the act of performing an attack cycle where your character is constantly in motion and still getting in attacks without missing any DPS. Woox Walking patterns change depending on what your weapon's maximum range or attack speed is. To perform a Woox Walk, you must attack your target from just outside your weapon's attack range. Then, immediately click to move again once your attack goes off, or when your true tile matches your weapon's max range. You will then walk 1 tile less than the attack speed and ticks of your weapon. This will make much more sense when viewed in practice, but for example, the blowpipe has an attack speed of 2 ticks, meaning you will attack out of its max range, then immediately click back, which will take up the remaining ticks in its attack cycle, and repeat the cycle by attacking again and clicking back, and so on. To begin the Woox Walk cycle with a crossbow, attack Vorkath from out of range, which will always be the back row. For my preferred Woox Walk pattern, I only do this if there are 2 acid-free spots in front of me. Here is the simplified pattern, with the tiles telling you what to do when you arrive to that tile, and how many ticks you have before you reach the next tile, and the next action should be made. It's important to know that this pattern can be flipped as long as it's pushed all the way against the back wall. Once you understand that you just need to cover 5 tiles for each attack cycle with the crossbow, you can start to do Woox Walk patterns like this, where only 1 tile in front of you is free from acid. This pattern is more difficult and easier to mess up, so I do not typically recommend it if there are more spaces available. One of the final tips I can give you for fighting Vorkath is he has a basic attack, the one-shot fireball. Instead of walking there, if you hold control and click, it will automatically invert whatever run setting you're using. So normally you would be walking during the entire Vorkath kill, but you can make your character run for one instance by holding control and clicking. You can remap this as well to make it a more convenient button, but what this does is it saves you a tick and potentially more time to eat, to move, to get another attack off before the fireball hits, whatever it may be. And finally, if you are still struggling with Vorkath, just know that that is okay. Everybody struggled with Vorkath at first, except for a few sweaty tryhards. But even me at 700, 800 kills, whatever I may be at right now, I still die occasionally by messing up or by not giving my full attention. Just know that with time and experience, you'll get better, And the biggest piece of advice I can give you is don't panic. And don't worry about doing the crazy advanced stuff yet. Knock down the basics. Eat up when you can. And stay safe. And get good. Well, that concludes the video. Thank you guys for sticking around and watching. Appreciate any feedback you give me. I really apologize for the crappy audio quality. I've been switching mics and I am on a laptop, so I'm just working with what I have. But if you guys need any further help, feel free to reach out to me in-game. Sentient, Xentient. I'll try to keep my private on. And again, take care guys. Bye.